Good evening and welcome along to Business Today. Hope you're doing okay. I'm Jerome Paul Sonko with Winnie Williams and Akauchi on Sign Language. We're coming to you live from Plot 42, Nile Avenue. Now, we kick it off with the national social security gridlock. As undermined, the social security has affected development in low-income nations, struggling with unclear retirement packages and investments. For Uganda, just 49% of the national employers can afford to remit employee contributions to the National Social Security Fund that has recently been infested with allegations of corruption and mismanagement. Samuel Kirimunda compiled this report.
Approximately 19 million Ugandans are recorded in the working bracket as per Uganda Bureau of Statistics, and surprisingly just 1.3 million are members in the National Social Security Fund. This has effectively evoked the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development to chip in and effect the 6 billion budget allocation to enforce execution of NSSF's wavering mandate.
Under that overall budget, I approved 220 billion for operations. Out of the 220 billion for operations, I indicated that allocate 6 billion for activities to drive the implementation of the new law with the target of expanding coverage and ensuring compliance.
NSSF's mandate has recently been challenged by public distrust of the contentious midterm access to members' contributions and payments, investment schemes and profitability that eventually oversaw the amendment of NSSF Act just last year, and further echoed by the ongoing investigations into allegations of corruption and mismanagement.
The fundamental thing at the fund, any Ugandan can write a letter requesting for money. I get requests from the Catholic Church, I get requests from the Rotary Union, I get requests from the Union.
Followed today, that is around 17.8 trillion, almost 18 trillion, is invested in asset classes approved by us, the regulator, and we can confirm that 76% of that has been invested in government securities, which can even be traced back to the Central Depository System at the central bank. 12% of that is invested in equities. Again, the value, the amount of the equities and the pricing of the equities can be traced back through the Uganda Securities Exchange. That total gives around 90% of the portfolio. The remaining percentage, which is around 7%, which is in real estate, is probably the subject of investigation, and the others are known asset classes of deposits, cash deposits, and equities that are not listed on the stock exchange.
The fund, whose net worth stands at 17.25 trillion shillings, has served beyond a retirement benefit scheme, utilizing its investment strategy to becoming one of the government's key bond holders, lending chunks of money to the state. Reactions.
The solid fund. Why should I go and borrow from abroad when there is money here?
The investment strategies of NSSF prior to the amendment of this NSSF Act 2022, before the amendment of the law, was clear. But with the insertion of Section 30 into the law now, it has made the investment strategy and prudential guidelines that they should follow to invest people's money vague.
As Uganda pushes for a comprehensive retirement benefit scheme for both public servants and private members, the performance of the Social Security Fund's pension scheme and equity of employers in the private sector will be crucial for success. Samlanifa, Samuel Chirimunda, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
Meanwhile, the government has released Q3 expenditure, and the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development has released the Q3 expenditure totaling up to 6,369.829 billion Ugandan shillings, representing 24.5% of the discretionary budget. Now, the parish development model was taken into consideration, but Ramadan Gobi, the permanent secretary to the Ministry of Finance, threatened to withhold the parish development model cash from parishes that are not prepared. Pedison Mumbere with more.
The Minister of Finance has released 6,369.829 billion for the third quarter of the financial year 2022-2023. Ramadhan Ngowi, the permanent secretary to the Treasury at the Ministry of Finance, threatened, therefore, to withhold parish development model cash from parishes that are not ready to receive this money.
So, the money which we have been releasing, we have released it strictly to those parishes which are ready, and so far, 8,931 parishes have been ticked as ready and have received the money. They are continuing to receive that money. Those which are not ready, we have the money here in the Treasury. That is about 1,663 parishes. They are not ready. So we are advising those local governments to expedite the processes of readiness so that they can also receive the money.
Among the key highlights in the third quarter release includes 264 billion to cater for parish development model, bringing the total release to 75% of the approved budget for PDM, 128.993 billion for payment of pension for retired civil servants, and 132.417 billion for gratuity payments. Ngowi was quick to warn accounting officers against late payment of wages and pension for civil servants and retirees.
Who are you as an accounting officer to start telling people you are not going to pay them salary? If indeed you don't have money, why don't you go to the ministry responsible for, first of all, the payroll and the money, and sort it out well enough? So that should show you that, and we are going to follow up this matter with those several accounting officers.
Other highlights include 122.410 billion to cater for the National Medical Stores to meet its obligation of purchasing essential drugs, 385.949 billion going to UNRA to pay certificates of the ongoing projects, 143.647 billion was as well given to universities, that's Makerere, Gulu, Barara, MUBS, Chambogo and UMI, in line with the semester requirements. Ngowi defended the national debt management policy, insisting that it's within the manageable levels. He was quick to inform Ugandans that Uganda has, in the first half of the financial year, been self-reliant. The executive director, CS Bank, Julius Mukunda, believes that in order to keep this pattern from changing, the government needs to start enforcing tax registration policy.
Someone will be right to say that Uganda has been self-sufficient, self-reliant in the first half of the financial year. So whatever difficulties we think we have faced, we have been able to finance ourselves.
So we need that. We need everybody to get on the tax register. That's how we can sustain being self-reliant. And of course, it goes with cutting our expenditure also, excessive expenses, you know. Specialties and special entertainment, you know, these are things that we need to begin to cut down.
Pedison Mumbere, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
Now, the government promises and fails to deliver, according to some of the key economists in the country. The budget framework paper for the planned 176.7 billion shillings for the fiscal year 2023-2024 has been presented by the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance. These have pleaded with the ICT Committee to help them deal with the problem of money not being issued on schedule, which has hampered most of their operations. Samla Hanifa with the report.
The legislators on the ICT committee were informed by the officials from the ICT ministry, who were accompanied by the State Minister, Honorable Kabyanga Godfrey Baluku, that their main priority for this fiscal year is focused on connectivity broadband rollout, so that internet can reach every region of this country because of the Parish Development Model Program needs data management system, and this can only be done via the internet.
This year is one to implement the last mile rollout and the connectivity broadband infrastructure. Now, after we have completed the NBI, we want now to distribute the internet. That's what we are calling the last mile, so that internet can reach parishes. Because right now, the
According to the minister, they have so many programs like the Digital Transformation Program, Innovative Ecosystem, Private Sector Development System, among others, but all these have been slowed down due to the late release of funds.
The parish development management information system can't work without internet. So want internet to reach everywhere, even in areas where other service providers can't go. For us as government, we want to reach there.
The parliamentarians who represent people with disabilities, on the other hand, have entrusted the ministry with bringing the certificate of compliance with gender and equity, which they did not bring with them when they presented their budget framework document.
The constitutional requirement under Article 32 of the Constitution on affirmative action and the rights of marginalized groups. It is also a constitutional requirement under Article 33 on the rights of women. These are all our national values, which we all cherish. Therefore, Chairman, when the Public Finance Management Act was being enacted, we may also made it a requirement that the Minister of Finance must always submit the certificate of compliance with gender and equity when presenting the budget to Parliament and the budget framework papers.
The MPs have also expressed worry over the ministry's failure to resolve the satellite problem, which has prevented many Ugandans from accessing free-to-air services despite funding for such initiatives having been approved by Parliament.
Nursing gaps and challenges to indicate the crisis the country is in right now as far as the free-to-air services is concerned. Countrywide, free-to-air services are off, especially up country. Me, as a member of parliament from Kasese, I'm already a victim. And when I made some simple consultations, I was informed that satellite services have not been paid for, and there's that huge bill to clear, and yet I have not seen that being mentioned in the report of the... What I've only seen is the directorate not to be financed.
In response, the minister told the committee that although it is true that UBC was given funding for that purpose last year, the ministry has yet to see a single penny of that money.
Free-to-air issue. Last year, this committee lobbied seriously, and the committee on budget accepted that we should get more money. And UBC was allocated 9.7 million shillings more. That money has never been released. And that money was supposed to handle that problem partly. Because it is only this country in East Africa that has not yet completed the migration from analog to digital. And because we have issues with our satellites and the like. So that 9.7 million which you lobbied for UBC was supposed to solve some of those problems. But up to now, we have not received even a single coin.
As a result of the important role that ICT plays in this country, the committee's vice chair, Honorable Nathan Nabeta Igeme, has guaranteed the ministry that their committee will discuss the shared issues when they meet with the Ministry of Finance.
And ICT definitely is an enhancer for everything that we can look at in terms of this economy. But unfortunately, it ends there. In the practical sense, I think Minister of Finance needs to also have a mindset change in terms of what ICT can do to a society. Exactly. So, so I think we are going to, once we have that retreat, the next issue is to deal with finance, for them to appreciate the impact of what ICT can do for the country.
The planned budget for the following financial year is 176.7 billion shillings, which represents an increase over 52 billion shillings from the ICT budget for the fiscal year 2021-2022. Samlanifa, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
Now let's look at the impact of credit ratings, as the most recent assessment from Fitch placed Uganda's credit rating at B+ with a stable outlook. It predicted that due to lower COVID-19 spending, Uganda's general government deficit will decrease from 9.2% to 7.5% of GDP in the fiscal year 2022. The financial systems analysis of Uganda's situation reveals that despite Kenya's robust economy, Uganda's economic situation is in a better position to pay back loans with a B+ rating than Kenya with a B negative. Ronia Katusime reports.
Borrowers utilize credit ratings to judge a country's ability to repay loans and to price interest rates for loans based on the ratings. With low credit ratings, the odds of borrowing at favorable rates are low, while with good ratings, the possibilities of borrowing at favorable rates are high. Nevertheless, a country's ranking is determined by a number of variables, regardless of how well its economy is doing.
If you're trying to raise money and your rating is judged to be poor, nobody is going to give you the money, or if they do, they will give you that money at a very high rate. But then the implications are they even translate and go beyond government borrowing to even the private sector that borrows, because now if the country's rating is very high, there is also that feeling that possibly even the private sector in that country might not be able to pay me back, especially if they're borrowing from outside.
For example, Uganda, we have something coming that is going to improve our economy substantially. Oil from the western region, okay? It is expected that it might begin to flow 2025, 2026, okay? So that improves the outlook for a lot of things, because between now and then, it's going to be a lot of investments, a lot of dollars coming in, but also things like debt to GDP ratio, how much of our GDP is consumed by debt, how much of revenue, tax collections, for example, goes to interest or debt servicing. All of those things are taken into account. So yes, Kenya might be a larger economy, but what the raters are saying, it is slightly riskier than Uganda.
Even while the near-term economic outlook is at danger due to rising inflation and tighter financial conditions, which could hinder the fiscal adjustment process, high or medium credit ratings nevertheless provide investors with a level of assurance over the durability of the nation's economy. Chisirinya Francis, however, contends that there are other elements necessary for Uganda to catch up economically, and Fitch credit ratings are not the only ones that draw investors to a nation.
Most of the time they look at the macroeconomic indicators, things like inflation. How are you managing your inflation? Because remember, your inflation touches a number of things, including your ability to pay back. The second thing that they look at is how are your balance of payments. You know, if you are getting more, you are importing so much more than you are exporting. It means you are getting less foreign exchange and spending much more out on export, on imports, which means that if you are going to pay back, you have to get other sources which you can use to pay back your loans.
With the IMF withdrawing its assistance to Zambia and Ghana, demanding additional time to repay her loans, for Uganda, a medium Fitch grade is crucial because it not only promotes investment, but also shows that Uganda still has the capacity to reduce her public debt to the same extent that our borrowing never decreases. Bernia Katsime, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
And now let's talk matters unrelated infrastructural shortfalls. Road infrastructure maintenance sits at number 2 among Uganda's priority areas for the 2023-2024 budget. However, the reputation at hand debunks most efforts to attain an efficient transport network, reflected in the aftermath of the heavy early morning rains that submerged Kampala and pushed businesses to a standstill. Ivan Tibenkana with more.
Kampala's transport network chronicles have been recited early today when a heavy downpour turned the city into a floating island, suspending businesses and ushering in long hours of traffic that peaked into the late hours of the day, more like a reminder for redress in the upcoming budget.
We are majorly affected by the road in terms of, like, at least because of jam, definitely people will not come in for business. They will not buy fuel, and I think basically it was caused by the Kira Municipal Council does not do its work properly. I think this is what we think.
We lose between 2.3 million, assuming it rains for a week. Customers can't come through for the products with an impassable road. The beds are simply seated because of this trench. It needs to be dredged. Uganda's attempt towards an efficient integrated transport system suffers clear planning challenges, especially in pockets of the ecosystem, such as wetlands, where road and industrial infrastructure have been established but mocked by many concerned parties.
I think for me, the national transport system in this country needs to be revamped in a way that you don't need really to build a road that lasts for only one year. Roads should last for more than 50 years. And as long as you continue doing shortcuts, definitely you're going to get a road deal out of it. Because potholes are covered today, when it rains the next day, they're even bigger than what they are.
Early last week, KCCA's commitments towards infrastructure rendition was highlighted by works on potholes of a budget of over $1 billion Ghanaian shillings. Meanwhile, this remains a critical approach to the chronic transport setbacks beyond rainy periods.
And have a good policy, but action speaks louder. Yeah, so even when you have a good policy, its relevance lies in action associated with implementation. So whether we have gaps in policy that can be identified or assessed, but the question is, even if the policy is bad or is weak, it may have some areas of implementation. The question is, how far have we implemented the policy? So we need to first look at the actions we're undertaking, and if the policy is impeding the action, then we'll review the policy. But as far as we're concerned, the policies are there, the laws are there, but the implementation is actually weak. And that's when I'm looking at the collective accountability.
A fight between technocrats and the cities just drains us. Kampala provides more than 50% of the Ugandan economy. But just look at the roads, look at the traffic jam, look at air pollution. I mean, simply because politicians are ever fighting. I've never seen Kampala without fights among politicians and technocrats.
East Africa's hope towards growth is partly banked on investment in transport infrastructure, such as Kenya's $3.2 billion project, lending a lift to Uganda, especially with on-hand funding from the African Development Bank and other institutions. Ivan Tibenkana, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
So immediately after the break, we will be heading to our coffee court conversations tonight. So stick around with Smart 24 TV. We do return immediately. Smart 24, driving business.
The taste of Uganda in a new international park.
He must be rich, tall, handsome, from a respectable family. He must have a maid because at our home we do not work.
Conductor Masao.
What? Obadde olobye ku simu?
Ya munange anti yo TV enkolera.
Nyumira omulembe omupya ogujjudde ebisanyusa omuli emikutu gya TV egisukka mu 8 n'egya radio nga kw'otadde ne zifirimu ng'osinziirira wonna w'oli. Genda mu App Store oteeke app ya GOTV channels ku simu yo olwo onyumirwe ennaku 3 ng'olabira bwereere ewatali kozesa data. GOTV channels.
The body of Mr. Namdi Wokiji was found at a beach house this morning.
When was the last time you saw Namdi?
At the party.
Did you notice anything strange about last night?
Are you taking money from my mother for this wedding?
Shouldn't be looking at that.
Ichi killed my son, and I want the world to know it.
Smart 24, driving business. All right, now our coffee cup discussions head into tonight. The current state of education in Uganda in terms of internal and external efficiency, equity and non-quantitative factors like national policy. It does identify 4 primary problem areas that still exist: persistent illiteracy, high dropout rates at practically all educational levels. Now, there's also a lack of competent teachers and a shortage of teachers, as well as a growing gap between educational preparedness and available job prospects. Now, the coffee call tonight gives us an insight of Uganda's education policy and how important it can shape up the next generation.
Well, it is a pleasure, and I must thank you for joining us on the Coffee Court. I must re-emphasize that this is where we ask the critical, short, but most significant questions. Of course, such times like these, people are preparing to go back to school. One of those cardinal and important topics to be discussed is the education sector in Uganda. We ask ourselves the following questions. Why do we have the curriculum that we still have? And is the current curriculum suitable to suit the current situation? I must say, joining me to discuss this is Professor Tukamushabe. Of course, Eddie, he's a Vice Chancellor from Otamu University. He is also a professor. His PhD is in the field of hospitality and leisure. That and more will stem our discussion. My professor, thank you for joining us. What does it take to train a professor in Uganda, first and foremost?
Yeah, it takes an individual initiative. Professorship is not trained, but as an individual, career growth, you determine that you are going to be a professor. And this is through the efforts one makes through publications that are peer-reviewed and the contribution to society that you have as an individual, and of course to the academia, and therefore your peers within the area of discipline that you want to profess should also recognize that yes, this individual can and will be able to provide solutions to the societal problems depending on the area he or she has specialized in.
Okay. One of those very significant that many of you out there would probably be yearning to. Let's talk about the curriculum we have now. So you have a curriculum where
You study 7 years primary, you have 4 years of O-level, you have 2 years of A-level, you're doing a certificate which is probably 1 year, you have a diploma of 2 years, you have a degree of 3 years if you're doing 1 of 3 years. If you're a law student, you have 4 or 5 years. What sort of curriculum is this?
Yeah, over the years, I think even the developers of curriculum in Uganda are realizing that what we have been offering over years is detached from reality. Whereas the beginning of education was based on the British office kind of training individuals for particular jobs, things or the environment has changed over time. And ideally, if the environment is changing, either because of man-made situations or natural environment, and you do not change the way teaching, the way students or children are handled, then you are training individuals who are going to contribute nothing within this changing environment.
So are you saying that those are some of the criteria that you people in this kind of level based on to set such curriculum for a country like Uganda, for God's sake?
Yeah, when the business environment changes, you need to change the curriculum to fit what is in the environment. For example, we did not invite the pandemic, the COVID, and therefore, whereas before we were emphasizing face-to-face or physical classes, and it was the norm, we used to think that, if you go to class and you sit and interface with the teacher, you are going to benefit more than a person who is online. But when the environment brought forced on us by the COVID-19, we were able to move into use of technology to teach. Okay. And we realized that we were not ready for that. Most of the universities were not ready. Even teachers, even kids did not know what to do, and it caused confusion. But universities that were ready were able to take up that opportunity and continue teaching online, and that is resilient.
So you seem to be suggesting, Professor Eddie, that by now we should have changed maybe the curriculum, given the effects of the pandemic you have just asserted.
Yeah, curriculum is already changing. If you have been following what is happening at National Curriculum Development Center for the lower secondary school, they have since realized that practicals, the real based learning, the school of reality is the way to go. Problem-based learning. For example, now I no longer ask my children to tell me what they want to be.
So you set pace for them for what? Is that good career guidance?
Yeah, that is it. So I ask them, what problem are you going to solve when you grow up?
That's your version as
That is my question. That is my version. I don't ask, what do you want to be? We used to be asked, what do you want to be? I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a medical doctor. I want to be a teacher, a nurse. And in the nursery, they would even sing it. We had rhymes that would mimic that.
But Prof, that would be okay because it helps you know what your child, what your student, what your neighbor intends to do. Desire is one of those key driving factors in life.
Correct, but desire without intention is also a challenge. For example, if I ask my child, what do you want to solve? Then if he says, I want to reduce the challenge of crime, then this individual probably would be focusing on subject or courses or programs to do with security. And therefore, one would be looking at programs like computer security and forensics. If a child is interested, for example, he has observed that there is a problem of transport, people moving from point A to point B, then he would be able to look at a program that would help him solve that problem. And probably that would be in engineering, to create, to design, and solve problems.
With all those examples, what are you trying to say, Professor?
I'm trying to say that, as you first said, that curriculum must change to fit individual children or individual personalities. If we continue to teach the same things en masse to everyone without looking at what individuals are able to do and therefore solve within the community, then we will continue to produce useless individuals who cannot think beyond what other people have thought before.
Before we get to the useless individuals, maybe I'll ask who teaches these useless individuals, but that can be a discussion we can get to. So you have a curriculum, you have over 25 years. Somebody seated in class. Is this too short? Is it too long? Is it something that we probably need to revise or cut?
For me, it is too long.
But it took you many years to become a professor.
It took me too long, not in my time. In fact, in the past used to be longer because of the perceptions of those who are teaching. For example, before getting a first class was a problem.
Those
days. Why? Because lecturers wanted to keep on top. Those who had reached on top wanted to remain there.
You never wanted us to occupy your space. Then,
not me. In my time,
I'm talking
things
to
have changed.
To the fellows you associate with.
I am liberated. I am a new breed. I am a new thinker because I have been exposed.
Okay.
For your information, I have taught in Uganda. I studied in Hong Kong. I have taught in Germany. I have taught and lived in Qatar, the Arab world. And I've been able to test and see what progressive countries are doing.
So what are they doing best that we are not doing vis-a-vis the current curriculum? Because these movements must not only be helpful to you, they must be impactful to the country like Uganda.
Thank you for that question. When I was in Arab world, I was teaching based on the Netherlands curriculum in the hospitality and tourism. And the curriculum was on a modular basis. That when a student does one module, it is so deep and it is so practical, and each of the topics within a given program or a given course are linked towards solving business problems. So we had what we call problem-based learning, a module on its own that trains individuals to identify problems and find solutions. By the time I left in 2021, we had moved from problem-based learning to design-based learning.
And what is that design-based learning?
Design that let kids start doing.
So what is failing all these practicals? We have a ministry that is open to dialogue, open to discussion. We have old educated brooms in this country like you. What is failing all these, the practical things, if you think that is the way forward to helping us?
The challenge has been basing all our studies or our systems on theory, basing on knowledge created outside our environment, and we think what works in UK, what works in USA, works for Uganda. Uganda is a unique country with its own unique challenges and problems.
And what are these unique challenges?
Issues to do with underdevelopment. We have resources that we cannot use on our own. And of course, the inherent challenge of financing. That if somebody had an idea and wants to create something that is unique, there is no immediate intervention by government. Hopefully now they are waking up to fund these innovations. And this morning, I have heard over the radio that the European Union has put money through Erasmus scholarship, money into training students at universities in innovation, research, and so on.
Okay, and
so why has it taken so long? Because for you to be able to provide knowledge to the graduate or the person, the trainee, you must have done research. So if you don't fund research, how do you create knowledge?
I would think the bigger question we'll be asking ourselves, Professor Eddie, is that who should spearhead the transition from the curriculum we have to the curriculum that can desirably give us the best products?
Yeah, the partakers, not until the children, the students demand that they are taught what is beneficial to them, they will continue to spend money on programs that are worth it.
If it was politics, the politicians would tell them to go on streets and strike and riot. I don't know if it is academics what we should do.
Dialogue and challenging the status quo. I have, after being exposed when I came back, I found still a ridiculous culture of where lecturers think students have nothing to offer. And when a student asks questions, it is a problem to the teacher.
You a student, what is it that you have to offer? You a student, you are my professor, you are my teacher, very experienced, what is it that I have to offer?
And that is where the problem is. The thinking that the person you are teaching has nothing to offer. We assume that they are empty, like a glass that is empty, and therefore we want to fill it.
Maybe at master's level, maybe at PhD.
No, even at, do you know that the best researcher, I want to ask you the question, who is the best researcher when we use the age criteria?
Between 25 to 30.
No, maybe, you are wrong.
Maybe you can justify me
the best wrong. Researcher is a child who has started talking. A child who does, a child development. The kid is amazing. They never talk. They run through observing. This kid of 3 years, if you have children, what is the common characteristic of these 3 years, 4 years children? What do they do best? They ask questions.
But Professor, research is about both qualitative and quantitative. It's about go to the field, ask, find out how things happen and why they're happening. So what will a young baby, will he be able to
they ask questions.
A 3-year-old baby?
A 3-year-old. In fact, if you want to be wise, spend more time with a child and the old, the aged. Because the old have gone through the experience. They have that experience, they know what works and what does not work. Whereas a child who has started working, originally they have been observing, not talking. They listen, they observe, they experience, and when they start acting to explore what is in their environment, they learn by doing.
Professor, you said earlier on that we produce, you said nonsense.
No, not nonsense. Unready people who are not ready for work.
So who teaches these?
It is a combination of both, where they come from, parents, because the best education takes place at home, because it is practical, but parents have relegated their responsibility. In the name of being busy, they never take charge of, they never listen to the questions the child is asking.
Because they're busy looking for the sums of exorbitant fees you actually attach to them. They're busy looking for money, so they have no time to attend to this.
And that is
Please, you play your role, I play my role as a parent.
Understanding that paying fees or paying these exorbitant fees and relegate the responsibility to teachers who are also not informed is the cause of this cycle of no informed graduates ready to perform duties required at the workplace.
Professor, what do we do as we part short on this very important and significant discussion relating the curriculum of Uganda?
So we need to identify or to appreciate that every child, every student studies or learns differently. And therefore, we must structure the curriculum to fit the learner, not that the curriculum is for the teacher and therefore easily transferred to the learner without the learner getting involved. So learner involvement in creation of content, in what they want to learn, in what they want to be taught, is critical.
Professor Tukamshabe Eddie, thank you for finding us time and share with us, of course, his expertise regarding the curriculum of Uganda. And of course, I know one of the ways through which you want to develop a country is simply educate the citizen. And Professor says it is a collective responsibility. This is a coffee court, and definitely my name is Fred Makubuya.
Well, that is it for the Coffee Code tonight. That brings us to the end of Business Today. I'm Jerome Paul Sonko, and it's Wednesday, the 11th of January 2023. We've been coming to you live from Plot 42, Nile Avenue with Winnie Williams and Akoti on sign language. Have yourselves a blessed night and a good evening.